communication, like talking to us tonight. She's also project manager of the North Coast Regional Land Trust as a trained environmental educator and nature resource professional. Her work has focused on sustainable land use practices throughout Northern California, enhancing community stewardship of land and wildlife habitat. So thank you, Karlee. That's such good work. She's also an outings leader for Latino Outdoors and an avid rock climber. So welcome, Karlee Jewell. Thank you for speaking with us tonight.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you so much, Cindy, for the introduction, and Elliot for kicking us off. I'm really excited to be here with you all virtually. And we are going to get into all things otters here in just a moment. But like Cindy mentioned, my name is Karlee Jewell. I am a graduate student at Humboldt State University, and I have the great pleasure of working on the HSU Citizen Science River Otter Project directed by Jeff Black. I'm going to go ahead and screen share. So give me a moment while I hit some buttons here. And let's see if I can can somebody, Cindy, I can see you in my screen. Can you see that? Can you give me a thumbs up?
Do you want to see me?
Oh, no.
No. Okay, let me get to,
I'll
stop my video. How about that? How's that?
That might, let me try to stop share, screen share. Let's say, do you see merging citizen science and art North Coast Otters?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Please let me know if at any point in the conversation I start to glitch or sound a little robot-y, and I'll try to troubleshoot accordingly. Great. So I want to start us off with just a quick outline for what we can expect to talk about at the lecture tonight. We're going to start with talking about some of the results from the HSU Citizen Science River Otter Study in 2020. We will dive into some of the discoveries at the Arcata Marsh, a lot coming from Dr. Jeff Black and his past year out there. I will share a little bit about my thesis research, and then we will transition into talking about the North Coast Otters Public Art Initiative. And we'll save some time at the end for questions and answers. Like Elliot mentioned, super happy to have this be an informal setting. If you see a good pause in my conversation and you have a yearning, burning question, go ahead and unmute yourself. Also feel free to write a note in the chat. Elliot has kindly said that they will help field those questions as they come in. But let's get started. So I wanted to start us, it seemed appropriate to slide into this talk with some otters sliding into Humboldt Bay. So I'm going to start with this video, and there's not much in the volume, just some birds. But what I want you to focus on in this video, you'll see 3 otters as they run across kind of the screen up here. And then they run in and they're sliding into Humboldt Bay like this. And how they do that is they're running and then they kind of lie down, they tuck in their front legs, and with their back legs, they're running and they're kind of propelling themselves. Then they're sliding across the bay. And this leaves a really unique track in the mud. It almost looks like a heavy basketball has been rolled across the bay. So I encourage you, next time you are out at the marsh at low tide, to keep an eye out for some of those unique tracks going throughout Humboldt Bay. But it's also pretty cute to watch these little otters just have a really nice time sliding through the mud. And that's Jeff that you're hearing, who took this video. Minimize this, and I'll bring us back to here. Oh. Great. So that kicks us off as we slide into thinking about river otters who we're talking about today. And then I want to jump into some results. But before I get into results, I want to just provide some general context for the project. The HSU Citizen Science River Otter Project was designed and initiated in 1999 by Dr. Jeff Black, a wildlife biologist at Humboldt State University, who is in the virtual crowd this evening. So hey, Jeff, thanks for coming, and feel free to chime in at any point. I really value your perspective. And the overall goal of this study, right, is to describe the distribution and demographic of river otters on the coasts, the wetlands, and the watersheds in Humboldt, Del Norte, and the adjacent counties. And how do you do that? Through engaging community members, or who we call citizen scientists, as they report sightings of wild river otters out while they're in their favorite outdoor space. So this is a wonderful photograph of a wild river otter captured by Talia Rose. And as part of this 20-year-long effort, river otters in this region have been documented by citizen scientists from sea level all the way up to 2,100 meters along the North Coast mountain ranges to the east. So that's a very brief 30-second elevator pitch for the project and what it's hoping to accomplish. And let's go into some of the results. So diving into the numbers, in 2020, the number of citizen scientists who participated and made at least one observation to the study was 215 individuals. And to follow that up, the number of observations submitted in 2020 was 605. So out of the 215 observers, we had received a total of 605 observations. Which, to provide a little context, and I promise that this presentation is not graph heavy, but I do want to dig into some of the general trends that we are seeing. And this first graph on the left, if you're following my mouse, looks at the number of observers between 2015 and 2020. By and large, that number is increasing with each year, right? In 2015, you see a total of 186 observers, and that is increasing to now 2020 with 605 observations. And then moving to the right, you see number of observers this time from 2015 to 2020. And that is increasing as well, right? In 2015, we had 132 citizen science contributors. Looking to 2019, we are at 258 participants. And 2020, we had 215. So still a general increase in the number of folks participating. And what I hope that we can take away from this is that the community of otter spotters here in Northern California is certainly growing. And this is where I encourage you to join that growing community or continue to be a part of that growing community of citizen scientists who are actively contributing their observations of river otters so we can continue to keep tabs on our river otter friends. And making an observation is easy. Next time you are out at the Arcata Marsh or your other favorite outdoor space, and you happen to observe a wild river otter, yay, that is so exciting. And I encourage you to try to remember the date, the time, where you are, in proximity, especially if you're like at the marsh. Are you at Clop Lake? Where are you in the greater space in the landscape? How many otters did you see? And with that, did you see adults or pups? And think about what are they doing? What's their behavior? That can be, are they eating? Are they hunting? Are they running? Are they swimming? We're interested in all of those things. And you can submit that email, or you can submit that information via email like you see on the screen, otters@humboldt.edu. You can use a phone number. We are on Facebook, and we're on Facebook. So if you wanted to send a Facebook message, that would work too. And we really just want to reiterate that every observation is so important and that we hope you consider joining or continuing to participate in this community of citizen science observers. And so I want to share a quick report from Dr. Jeff Black reflecting on his 2020 observations. And since the beginning of the pandemic, Jeff has been biking down avidly to the Arcata Marsh almost 5 days a week to observe the river otters who frequent the constructed wetlands there. He has seen otters almost every time, and he now knows better where to look for them and is able to predict a little better where they will be, more than he used to. And so over the season, he has gained a lot of insight on how the otter's diet will shift depending on the season, and also how many males are moving through the area of the Arcata Marsh. So let's dive into that a little bit more. And here are some just adorable photos. And I want to prompt us with a question. So some folks might be wondering, like, okay, so is the population of otters at the marsh up or down? Where are we? And I want to preface this by saying that that's a somewhat tricky question to answer outright, but I can share what was observed last year and provide some context. So for every year for 23 years, the project has seen pups at the Arcata Marsh. Last summer, there was a litter of 3 pups, which you can see in these photos, little tiny ones. And this is the mom right here. And 2 of these pups disappeared fairly early on. These pups emerged from the den on June 4th, 2020. One of the pups was with the mom all the way through winter. And we suspect that an older daughter joined them to make a group of 3, that they were kind of together in that assemblage through 2020. Now they are all singletons again. And we think that the mom is in the den somewhere nursing pups. As for the males, they come by the marsh and are usually traveling through. They don't stay very long. There were 4 that were observed over the winter. Sometimes they were in groups, sometimes they were alone. Male otters are typically a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger than their female counterparts. And they're typically coming from Humboldt Bay, entering through one end of the marsh, and then going right through and out the other. So they're kind of more just moving through. But for 2020, that gives us, we had at most 3 pups, 2 females, and 4 males, bringing us to a total of 9 river otters making use of the Arcata Marsh on a regular basis in 2020. And there were 2 dead otters that were recently picked up, and all of the pups have since disappeared. And so this is a hard fact, but most offspring don't survive in any wildlife species. So this is not uncommon, but it is a good reminder, I think, that when you see an adult in the wild, those are really tenacious individuals who have made it through a lot to get to where they are in their life cycle phase, and they continue to be really tenacious even in their adult stage. So that is a little recap of what we were seeing in 2020. And with that being said, the city of Arcata recently reminded visitors and residents alike of the need to drive slowly near the marsh, and especially on I Street, right? When we're thinking about those 2 otters that were just recently picked up on roadside. And that's not just driving slow for otters, but other wildlife that's making their way across these local streets. So we got a City of Arcata, thank you for this lovely new sign at the Arcata Marsh. And we hope that this can be an opportunity for us to amplify that message here tonight with folks. And some other exciting news, we really anticipate that the pups of 2021 will be emerging from their den any day now. And these are going to be really tiny, tiny little ones, similar to what we were seeing in the previous slide. So please keep an eye out and report any sightings of that. We're really excited to see them make an appearance here. Okay, well, now that I have briefly kind of laid a foundation for the HSU Citizen Science River Otter Project, I want to briefly discuss where my thesis work fits into all of this. And I'm not going to get too into the nuts and bolts, but I do want to provide us with an overview. And my research is particularly focused on understanding the ways in which participation in citizen science and then communication of scientific topics through interactive and interpretive methods can affect participants' environmental knowledge, their attitude towards the environment, and further participation in citizen science. And so my research is focused on citizen science participants from 2015 through 2020 who submitted a wild river otter observation with a valid email to us, to the project. And through a series of surveys and some interpretive and educational content creation, I'm really looking at the following. So, participation in citizen science. Does participating, when folks participate in citizen science, is this affecting their environmental knowledge of river otters and their habitats? And is participation in citizen science affecting their attitude towards the environment? Are they having more pro-environmental attitudes as a result of participating in citizen science? So this is the first question that I look at through my research. Moving to the second question related to science communication. So does communication of scientific topics through interactive and interpretive methods affect participants' environmental knowledge of river otters and their habitats, their participation or intent to then participate in citizen science, and again, their attitudes towards the environment, right? So is direct participation in citizen science playing a factor in these? And is how we communicate with these citizen scientists impacting that as well? So ultimately, my research seeks to understand effective strategies for communicating science. So, for example, how do current citizen scientists prefer to be communicated with? What are the main modes of communication that are preferred? And what are they curious to know more about? What can we share with them to better communicate the project to date? So, if I find that sharing project information through interactive and interpretive forms of communication can indeed increase environmental knowledge and participation in citizen science, as well as elevated attitudes towards the environment, it could be useful for other science professionals or natural resource managers who are currently implementing or interested in implementing a citizen science project. And it allows for a more effective communication of project information to participants. So let me change the slide here. So what do I mean when I'm saying interactive and interpretive means of communication? Here is an example. I built a new website with help from Jeff and others that synthesizes river otter observations submitted to the project between 2015 and 2020 through an interactive map. So I'm going to take us to that and show us what that looks like. So this is the North Coast Otters website. And from the top page here, there's all these different tabs that you can check out related to learning more about otters, learning more about Northern California habitats, art, science, and other ways of knowing, and then of course getting in contact with us. But if you scroll down, you can learn a little bit more of some of the results that we've seen from 1999 through present. And here is the interactive map. So this map is an opportunity for folks to really get a more visual understanding of the observations to date. So I can zoom out of this map, I can zoom into this map, and I'm going to slide us over right here. And so this map has not only information about records to date. So let's say, for example, I wanted to look at all of the observations submitted to the project in 2019. I'm now with the red 2019 observations, and I'm seeing a good spread of observations throughout the project area. What is also unique about this map is that it has separate layers for stories of people, place, and otters. And it also has some art sculptures that we'll talk about more in just a moment. But I want to give you a glimpse of what these people, place, and otter stories look like. These black stars, when you click on them, they actually have a text and an image and a small story associated with, in some way, shape, or form, with the HSU River Otter Citizen Science Project. So I certainly encourage folks to come play around with this. It's a really unique tool to be able to see where all of our citizen scientists have contributed their observations over the year, just so that over the years of 2015 through 2020. And there's a lot on the website, so I think someone could have a really good time spending some time here going through the different tabs. But I'm going to leave it at that so that we can transition to some other things. And what I want to pivot to just slightly is a supplementary project of the HSU Citizen Science River Otter Study called the North Coast Otters Public Art Initiative, which some folks may have heard of. This initiative really arose from a desire to share what we have, what the Citizen Science River Otter Project leads are learning about the wild otters with the community through an educational art festival and treasure hunt. And so the initiative, to give some context, it really provides an opportunity for community members to connect with the North American river otter through merging art and science. And so to date, the project has commissioned 108 artists to decorate 108 3-foot tall otter sculptures, which you can see in the images here. And I promise that those are really small, but in real life, they are these really great 3-foot tall otters. If you can see my video, I have Bob the Adventure Otter, who was completed by a grad student, Jess Barger. And these otters are going to be displayed at shops and galleries, at schools, and other North Coast locations throughout Humboldt, Del Norte, and neighboring counties. And so I like to think of this as a big festival, as a treasure hunt for decorated river otter sculptures throughout Northern California. And like many things, the festival was set to begin in person in May 2020, almost a year ago to date. And like many other things in 2020, we adapted the festival in the midst of a pandemic. And on World Otter Day, which was May 27th, 2020, we launched an initial sneak peek of the otter sculptures virtually. So folks could go online and see all of the wonderful 108 art sculptures. And you like a little drum roll, because we are finally at the point where we can begin to safely transition the festival from virtual to in person. And so we are rolling out these otter sculptures one at a time, two at a time, to the different host locations. I think Jeff said that he unloaded 2 or 3 otters today to the host locations. And once state and county announces that we are open, we will open the auction for these art pieces. We will begin to kick off our junior Otter Spotter Ranger program and release the treasure hunt guidebook so folks can begin finding these otters in person within their local communities. And with that, I want to give us just a sneak peek for the otter that will be at the Arcata Marsh Interpretive Center. This otter is named Humberter, and the artwork is completed by Sean Gould. And so if you have not already done so, I certainly encourage you to check out the online sneak peek to get a glimpse of all of the wonderful otter art. And I will have a link to that on the next slide. Let's get there. And with that, that was a very robust year, 2020 year in review, year and ahead, and a little dip into some of my thesis research topics. And I really want to just thank folks for attending today. I want to thank Friends of the Arcata Marsh for providing space for this conversation, and want to just open it up for questions. I noticed some comments in the comment box, so we can start with that and see where we go.
All right, let's see. First off, was a necropsy done on the pups that you found? I think you mentioned there were 2. How were they killed, and was there a necropsy?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure. Jeff might have more topic on that. I don't think we found the pups. We did find 2 otters, but I think they were adults. Jeff, if you want to unmute yourself and chime in on that, please do, or you can put in the chat, whatever's easier. Nope, sounds like they did not find the pups, and there was no necropsy done.
Okay. Next question. How do you identify individuals? How do you know there were 9 otters at the marsh?
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly goes back to Jeff's really intensive time and efforts out there. He has, been going there. He said he counted them on one day. So just the consistency in being out there, being eyes on the ground, you can really start to get a sense for the same individuals that are returning again and again. But he said that he counted them all in one day within 1 hour.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Next question was, when otters pass through the marsh, do you know where they're coming from and where they're going? Is there a pattern?
That's a good question. From Jeff and I conversation, it sounds like they are passing through from one area of Humboldt Bay, making their way to another area within Humboldt Bay, and just kind of using the marsh as a pass between, somewhere with food, somewhere with a little bit more slow flow water. So Jeff, if you want to chime in on if you have any thoughts on exactly where they're going, please do.
Okay. Interrupt me if you choose. What is the address of the website? You did give that, so this is a good chance to repeat it.
Yeah, it's right here actually on our screen here. http://reclaim.hosting/North Coast Otters.
And while we're at, would you give the phone number once again?
Oh yeah, let's see. I'm gonna blast you all with some fast moving slides. Oh, Jeff put it in the comments, so you can see it there in the comments. Looks like 826-3439.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Let's see. Oh, I see Jeff seems to be answering the questions also here, so I'll have to go through those.
He is providing some insight as well.
All right. The last question that I see is one about iNaturalist. Are you using that for reporting?
We do have some folks who are reviewing those observations of wild river otters and adding it to our observations as well. Yes.
Okay. And are any of the otters tagged, which is a reasonable question, I guess, when you're wondering how do you tell one otter from another?
To my knowledge, they aren't tagged, though I'm sure Jeff will put a comment in there if I'm misspeaking on that.
Okay, so there is a project with iNaturalist. That's good. And I guess we would just do a search for otters.
Yes. Yeah. Yep, that's correct.
Do otters make it to the Mad River?
Certainly. Yeah, you can definitely see otters in the Mad River, all along the coastline here from far down as Mendocino, where we're receiving observations, up to Del Norte. And yeah.
So I take it that means all the rivers locally would be involved?
I do believe there is observations on most of the rivers in Northern California. Yeah, but certainly if you're in the Mad River watershed, you could see river otters. Yeah, everywhere really.
Okay. Well, that's all the chat questions. Let me encourage people to take a minute here and unmute yourself and ask either Karlee or Jeff any other questions that we haven't addressed.
I see Lucia in the chat asked, have any sea otters been spotted here? I do vaguely remember Jeff saying that there was a sea otter spotted once several years back, but by and large, we do not see sea otters up here.
You know, that reminds me, there was an article a while back about cat diseases. I'm trying to remember the name of the disease where cat feces have oocytes that get washed out into the ocean, and that sea otters were affected by that. I wonder if our freshwater toxoplasmosis, thank you. I wonder if that's also a problem for the otters that we might see at the marsh.
That is an interesting question that I do not have an answer to. Jeff says that it could be a problem.
Could be a problem. I guess we'd have to check their poop, huh?
Could do that. Oh, can I ask a question?
Of course, yeah.
What do the otters eat besides? Well, you know, I was worried about the goslings and the goose, the Canada goose nests. You know, like, are they really susceptible to otter predation? And who eats the otters out there? Who are their enemies out there?
Yeah, great question. So river otters are apex predators in freshwater habitats. So they're really top of the food chain there, and they will eat quite a bit. They are very strong predators. They will certainly feed on ducks and waterfowl, fish. Really, anything out there is pretty fair game for them. Jeff's chiming in that they do eat a lot of birds and mostly coots.
Oh, wow.
Who eats them?
They don't, being an apex predator out there, I don't think that they have a main predator. I'm sure if one of them was injured or hurt, that they could be susceptible to being predated on by another terrestrial mammal, but they don't have a main predator.
A Canada goose? That's bigger than the otter. Do the otters tag team their prey? Do they chase it into the jaws of another otter, for example?
That's a good question. They do sometimes mobilize. Yeah, males might mobilize into a group like we saw at the Arcata Marsh with the 4 males to hunt together. But they can also be totally fine as singletons hunting out there as well. Any other questions?
Have we done it, folks? Anybody out there? You have a little hand icon at the bottom of your screen. This would be a good time to hit that button so that we get all the questions possible out there.
Lucia in the chat mentioned, do they move in groups? Yeah, we were just touching on that. Males sometimes will form groups that move together, though that is not a all the time thing. And kind of like I mentioned in 2020, we did see the mom and her pup kind of group up with what we suspect was an older offspring of that same mom individual, female individual. So they will get in groups. Can you show a group of males? Jeff is asking me if I can show a group of males. And I can. I'll maybe stop sharing while we take some questions and pull up a photo of the 4 males. Yeah, here we go. And looks like we have some other hands raised. I can pull this up while we look at that.
I'll ask a question.
Of course.
When is there going to be an event on World Otter Day on the 27th of May? It's coming up, and you know what's happening with the auction, etc.
Yeah, great question. I'm going to pause this video so I can answer that, and then we'll go back to it. We don't have like a particular event set for World Otter Day. We are just really focused right now on getting the otter art sculptures out to their host locations so that we can roll that out in person as soon as we get the green light from the state and county level. So that's really where our energy is at now. And, you know, we're hoping that that can be kind of a swift transition there to getting folks in person and seeing these otters out in their communities. Great. Okay, so can you see the video? Let me try to screen share this real quick. And are we seeing the YouTube video? Thumbs up from anybody?
Yes.
Okay, let me press play here. And this is a really good video that is showing 4 male otters as they kind of slowly make their way across the trail. This is an example of them kind of moving through in a group. Make that full screen.
They look very cautious.
They look very cautious and moving pretty in group there. Is that the trail at the northwest corner of Clop Lake? I believe so. The northwest corner.
West.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's kind of what we're talking about when they group together like that. That's like a group of 4 moving through the habitat together.
That's great.
If that was a group of males, that does suggest, how do they persuade a female to mate? Is there a courtship ritual?
That's a good question. I am by no means an expert of reproduction related to wild river otters, but they do typically kind of get into like singleton mode where these groups will kind of separate, like I mentioned with the females, how they were grouped together throughout 2020, and then 2021 rolls around, or, you know, they don't adhere to a calendar like we do, but that general timeline, they kind of separate and come out on their own as singletons. So Jeff mentioned 3 copulations last month, just one of those males and 1 female.
Huh? Man, he must be out there a lot. Way to go, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff is really been out there so much in 2020 and is just learning so much about what they're eating, where they're moving throughout the day. I think really getting to know them pretty on a personal level there.
Well, that suggests maybe you could help us amateurs know when and where are the good times to spot these otters.
That's a good question. I know that Jeff tends to go out there in the morning time. And one of his best strategies that he's always talking about is you might be walking around and you can be looking in the ponds around for an otter movement, and that's great. But one of the things that you can really do is start to just listen, and you might hear some bird action happening over here, or some bird drama happening over here. And that's where you want to be looking, because these otters could be in the process of flushing those birds out. So birds can be a good visual and auditory cue for the presence of a predator. And you can really see otters at any time at the marsh, but yeah, Jeff's putting in the comments, you need to be a bird watcher first. So you don't need to identify the birds, but as long as you can listen in, you can hear them, you can see them flying away. That's a good initial indicator that there might be something going on over there, river otter related.
And that sounds like they do like to sample all of the various types of water and ponds and marshes and sloughs at the marsh. Is that right?
They do frequent quite a few of the ponds. They do have some regular spots that they kind of like to triangulate through, going through some culverts that connect each of them. But they will use any and all parts of the marsh. It makes great habitat for wild river otters.
Terrific. Makes me want to get my binoculars and head out there.
Yes. Yeah, and with that, just a reminder that we should really be seeing those pups emerge from their den any day now. So keep an eye if you are out there for them, and let us know. We'd certainly love to hear about them. Cindy, I see you asked, are they still in Trinidad? Yes, they are still in Trinidad. We still get reports of them.
Creeks or shoreline?
Yeah, that's a great question. So river otters they exist in freshwater habitats. So they need fresh water to survive, but they will, be out at the Trinidad harbor. But they're always going to be moving back to some freshwater habitat at some point in there and back, which is one of the distinguishing characteristics between a river otter and a sea otter. But yes, still in Trinidad. You'll see them in freshwater. You will see them in saltwater. And if you see them, let us know.
Huh. Do they respond to fishermen cleaning their catch and throwing parts?
I've never seen that. That's a good question. I'm sure that Jeff could chime in on that. He worked pretty closely with the gentleman who had a really robust data set of wild river otter sightings in Trinidad. And Jeff says, yes, they absolutely respond to fishermen cleaning. Scott Shannon, thank you. Scott was a really big pioneer of river otter records in Trinidad, in the Trinidad harbor. So.
Okay, well, I can't think of another question. If you notice the raised hand icon there, folks, if anybody else has a question, this is the time. Okay, well, then I think we've done it. Karlee, I'd like to thank you very much. This was really thorough and a nice view of some of our neighbors out there in the water. And for our listeners, thank you all for coming. And I'd like to point out that Lynn, one of the board members at Friends of the Marsh, will be putting this up on the website, and it might be on Facebook too. So look for that in the future. Thank you all for coming. look forward to an announcement in the next month or two for future speakers. And I hope they're all as entertaining and fun as tonight's talk on otters. Karlee, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Karlee.
thank you. Yeah, have a great evening. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks for sharing.
Of course.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.